They sent the infertile widow to a rancher as a bet, but she came back with a son. The small town of Cedar Creek was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business. People whispered in corners, watching the lives of others like a slow-moving drama. Among the residents there was a widow named Clara. She had been young when she married, and her life had once been filled with hope and laughter. But after losing her husband to an accident and learning that she could never have a child, her world became quiet and lonely. The house that once held warmth now felt like a shell of the past, echoing memories that made her heart ache. She spent her days tending to the small garden behind her home and the nights staring at the dark sky, wondering if life would ever offer her another chance at happiness. Despite the kindness she had shown to neighbors, the town had a streak of cruelty that never went unnoticed. There were a few men, known for their gossip and bets, who enjoyed testing others and measuring their weaknesses. One evening, as they gathered around the dim light of the saloon, conversation turned to Clara. They laughed at her misfortune, sneering at her inability to have children, and one of them, bold and careless, proposed a bet. "Let's see if she can last a week on a ranch," he said, his voice full of amusement. "I bet she'll fail and come crawling back." The others chuckled, not realizing the depth of what they were mocking. To them it was just a game. For Clara, it would be a turning point. The town council, or what passed for one in Cedar Creek, decided to send Clara to a distant ranch owned by a man named Thomas. Thomas was known as a hard-working, quiet rancher who rarely spoke more than necessary. His ranch was far from the town, a place where the wide fields stretched endlessly, and the wind carried a sense of freedom, but also isolation. Clara was given little choice in the matter. She was told she would have a fresh start, but it was clear that the arrangement was made to test her resilience as part of the bet. Clara felt a mix of fear and curiosity. She had been broken by her past, but there was something in her heart that longed for a new beginning, even if it was forced. The journey to the ranch was long and exhausting. Clara traveled by a rattling stagecoach, passing hills, rivers, and stretches of empty land. Each mile carried her further from the town that had judged her, and closer to a life that was unknown. She watched the scenery with a mixture of awe and trepidation, feeling the weight of her situation pressing on her shoulders. She was leaving behind familiar sorrow for the promise of something different, something she could not yet name. When she finally arrived, the ranch sprawled before her like a vast open world. The buildings were sturdy but worn, the fences weathered by years of wind and sun, and the smell of hay and animals filled the air. It was a place that demanded work, a place where every day would be a test of strength and patience. Thomas, the rancher, was there to meet her. He was a man in his late 30s, tall and broad-shouldered, with eyes that seemed to observe more than they spoke. His life had been one of routine and labor, shaped by the land and animals he cared for. He had seen many people come and go, some ready to work, others unprepared for the challenges of ranch life. When Clara stepped off the coach, he studied her, quietly. There was no immediate welcome, no grand gestures, just a nod and a brief introduction. "You'll find the work hard," he said plainly. "But if you're willing, you'll survive." His tone was neutral, neither mocking nor kind, but Clara felt a strange sense of relief in his honesty. The first days on the ranch were difficult. Clara learned quickly that life here was not like life in town. The mornings began before sunrise, with the feeding of animals and the cleaning of stalls. She carried buckets of water, shoveled hay, and mended broken fences. Her hands, soft from years of gentle living, soon bore calluses, and her muscles ached in ways she had never known. At first she questioned whether she could continue, whether she had the strength to meet the demands of this new world. But each night, as she looked at the vast sky filled with stars, she felt a spark of pride. She was doing the work, surviving the day, and learning to stand on her own again. Thomas observed her from a distance, noting her determination and quiet perseverance. He did not speak much, but he began to offer small guidance when needed, showing her the proper way to feed the horses or mend a fence. There was a respect that grew between them, unspoken at first, born from shared effort and mutual acknowledgement of the hardships they faced. Clara started to feel a connection to the land, a sense of purpose she had not known since the loss of her husband. The fields, The animals, the chores, they all became a rhythm, a steady beat that carried her forward from sorrow to a fragile hope. As the days turned into weeks, Clara began to notice small changes within herself. She felt stronger, more capable, and less defined by the pain of the past. The isolation of the ranch, which once frightened her, became a space for reflection and growth. She could work at her own pace, learn from her mistakes, and find solace in the quiet moments, like watching the sunrise over rolling hills or listening to the distant calls of cattle. The town's whispers and the cruel bets seemed to fade, replaced by the tangible reality of her own resilience. Thomas, too, found his routine changing. He had lived years in solitude, relying only on himself and the land. But Clara's presence brought a subtle shift. He found himself smiling at small victories she achieved, noticing the careful way she tended to the animals and appreciating the steady determination she brought to each day. Words were rare between them, but each gesture, each shared moment of labor, built an understanding and trust that neither had expected. Clara was not the fragile woman some in town had assumed. She was strong, intelligent, and capable, and Thomas recognized the quiet strength that shone through her actions. Evenings on the ranch became a time of quiet companionship. After the work was done, they would sit by the fire, sometimes in silence, sometimes sharing stories of past lives and dreams for the future. Clara spoke of her husband, of the love she had lost, and of the sorrow that had followed her for years. Thomas listened, never interrupting, allowing her to speak freely, providing a safe space for her to release the weight she carried. These moments, simple yet profound, allowed Clara to heal in ways she never imagined possible. Life at the ranch was not without hardship. Storms would sweep through, breaking fences, flooding pastures, and testing the endurance of both people and animals. Clara learned to face each challenge with courage, understanding that each problem required patience, resilience, and sometimes ingenuity. The cruel bet from the town became irrelevant in these moments. Her survival depended only on her effort and determination. Each day, she grew more confident in her ability to handle life's unpredictability, and the quiet pride that accompanied each small victory fueled her spirit. By the end of the first season, Clara had transformed. She was no longer the fragile widow that townspeople had whispered about. She had found a rhythm, a purpose, and a sense of self-worth that came from hard work, honesty, and quiet perseverance. Thomas, who had once viewed her with mild curiosity, now respected her deeply, recognizing that her courage and determination were qualities that could not be measured by the cruel opinions of others. Together, they had begun to build not just a working partnership, but a bond rooted in mutual understanding and shared effort. As Part 1 closes, Clara stands at the edge of a wide field, looking out at the endless horizon. The wind carries the scent of grass, earth, and possibility. She feels the strength in her muscles, the steadiness in her heart, and the quiet hope that life may still have surprises in store. The cruel bet that once seemed like a curse has led her to a place of opportunity, growth, and unexpected companionship. The story is only beginning, and Clara, who once believed her life was defined by loss, now realizes that the future is hers to shape. Clara's days at the ranch had settled into a rhythm, yet each one brought its own lessons. She rose with the first light of dawn, when the air was cool and the birds began their morning songs. The vast field stretched endlessly, bathed in gold and green, and the sky seemed larger here than in town, limitless in its blue expanse. Clara had never realized how much peace could be found in work that required both strength and patience. Feeding the animals, mending fences, tending the garden, and hauling water. It was exhausting, yes, but there was a reward in seeing tasks completed, in the quiet pride of knowing she had done her best. Thomas observed her carefully. He had seen many people attempt ranch work before, and most gave up quickly, discouraged by the hard labor and long hours. But Clara persisted. Even when her hands grew sore and her muscles ached, she refused to let herself falter. There was a quiet determination in her, a steadiness that Thomas admired. He rarely spoke much, but his eyes often followed her with a mix of respect and curiosity. He noticed the way she adapted to the work, learning quickly how to anticipate the needs of the animals, how to notice when a fence post was weak or when a horse was uneasy. He began to understand that she had more resilience than anyone in town had ever given her credit for. The ranch itself was a place of constant learning. Clara had grown up in a small town where her days had been filled with simple household tasks. She had never handled horses before, nor repaired a broken fence with heavy tools under the sun. Each day she discovered new skills, sometimes making mistakes that frustrated her, but she never gave up. Thomas guided her when necessary, showing her the proper way to tie knots, feed the animals, or care for the sick ones. His instructions were always calm and direct. There was no harshness, no scolding, just practical guidance. Over time, Clara began to understand not only the tasks, but the thinking behind them. The ranch became a school of life, teaching her patience, observation, and quiet strength. Evenings were different from town life. There were no crowded streets, no gossip, no whispered judgments. Here, Clara and Thomas shared quiet moments by the fire, sometimes in silence, sometimes with simple conversation. She told him stories of her past, her lost husband, and the sorrow that had followed her. He listened, never interrupting, never judging. It was the first time in years that she felt truly heard, that someone acknowledged her pain without pity. Thomas, in return, would share small pieces of his life, how he had inherited the ranch, how he had grown used to solitude, and how he had learned to rely on the land for both work and comfort. These conversations, though simple, formed a bond that was rooted in trust and understanding. Clara began to notice subtle changes in herself. She felt stronger, more capable, and less defined by her past sorrow. Each day brought a small victory. The fence was mended correctly, the animals were fed on time, the garden flourished. She began to walk with a lighter step, feeling confidence in her abilities. The weight of the town's judgment, the whispers about her being unable to have children, began to feel distant, almost meaningless. Here on the ranch, she could measure herself not by gossip or ridicule, but by what she accomplished each day. She discovered a quiet pride that had been absent for many years. The ranch was not without its challenges. One afternoon, a sudden storm rolled in from the west, dark clouds spreading across the sky. The wind whipped fiercely, carrying rain that soaked the earth and made the animals restless. Clara rushed to secure the gates, shelter the horses, and cover the stacks of hay. She moved quickly and carefully, feeling the rain lash against her face and the wind tug at her clothes. Thomas joined her, and together they worked without speaking much, coordinating silently as the storm tested both the ranch and their endurance. When the worst of it passed, they stood together, soaked and tired, but satisfied. Clara realized that she could face hardships with courage and clarity, and Thomas saw in her eyes a quiet strength that inspired him as well. Over time, Clara's presence began to change the ranch in small, meaningful ways. She brought a sense of order to the routines, a careful attention to detail that Thomas had sometimes overlooked. She tended the animals with patience, noticing subtle changes in their behavior or health. She improved the garden, planting herbs and vegetables that would sustain them through the long winters. Her hard work was quiet, but it did not go unnoticed. Thomas began to rely on her judgment and insights, seeing her not just as someone learning the work, but as a partner capable of handling responsibility. Their bond deepened in simple, everyday moments. On warm afternoons, they would ride together to check the farthest fences, sharing stories or just the comfort of companionship. At night, they would sit by the fire, watching the stars appear one by one in the clear sky. Clara felt a sense of belonging she had never known in town. The loneliness that had been part of her identity for so many years began to fade. She realized that she could trust Thomas, and in doing so she began to trust herself once again. The work of the ranch also taught Clara patience in ways she had never imagined. Animals did not respond to commands immediately. Fences could not be fixed in a single day. Crops took time to grow. Each task required careful attention and repeated effort. She learned to accept small failures as part of the process, understanding that persistence and patience would yield results over time. This lesson carried into other parts of her life as well. She realized that healing from grief, rebuilding a life, and finding trust in others required the same steady effort. Clara also discovered moments of unexpected joy. A calf taking its first wobbly steps, the soft nuzzle of a horse, the quiet satisfaction of a garden in bloom. These small moments reminded her that life could still offer happiness, even after sorrow. Thomas noticed these moments too, often smiling quietly as he watched her reaction. He began to appreciate the way she found beauty and meaning in simple things, a perspective he had sometimes lost in years of routine labor. Together they started to see the ranch not just as a place of work, but as a home, a space of quiet fulfillment. One day, Clara came across an old shed at the far edge of the property. The wood was worn and the roof sagged, but she saw potential in it. She began to clean and repair the space, imagining a small area where she could work on projects, store tools, or even have a quiet corner to reflect. Thomas observed her dedication and offered advice, helping her reinforce beams or patch holes. The shed became a symbol of her ability to shape her environment, to take something neglected and transform it with care and attention. It was also a symbol of her own transformation, an indication that she could rebuild, create, and thrive, even after hardship. Through all these experiences, Clara began to feel a sense of self-worth that had been missing for so long. She understood that her life was no longer defined by loss, by the town's whispers, or by cruel bets made by careless people. She measured herself by the effort she put in, the skills she developed, and the trust she had earned from Thomas. Each day brought proof that she could survive, adapt, and even find happiness in ways she had not imagined. The ranch became a place of growth, not just for the land and animals, but for Clara herself. Thomas, in turn, began to see life differently. Clara's presence reminded him that even in a life of hard work and solitude, there was room for connection, empathy, and companionship. He admired her determination, her patience, and her quiet courage. He found himself opening up in ways he had not in years, sharing memories and thoughts that had been kept private. The partnership between them was subtle at first, built on shared effort and respect, but it deepened naturally as trust grew. Clara was not just learning from the ranch. They were learning from each other, discovering the strength in collaboration and the value of shared experiences. As Part 2 closes, the ranch had become a place of transformation. Clara, who had arrived as a quiet, grieving widow, was now a confident, capable woman. The cruel bet that had sent her here seemed irrelevant compared to the life she was building. She had learned skills, earned trust, and discovered a sense of purpose that nourished her spirit. Thomas, once solitary and reserved, had opened his heart in small but meaningful ways, forming a bond of mutual respect and quiet affection. Together they had begun to create a life rooted in hard work, patience, and understanding, a life that promised growth, connection, and the possibility of unexpected joys yet to come. Life on the ranch had become a steady rhythm for Clara, yet each day still held new lessons and subtle challenges. The seasons were changing, and with them came fresh responsibilities. Spring brought muddy fields and newborn animals. Summer offered long hours under the hot sun, and fall demanded preparation for the harsh winter. Clara embraced each change, learning not only about the work itself but also about herself. She began to understand that life was not about avoiding difficulties, but about facing them with patience, courage, and care. Thomas noticed the growing strength in Clara. She no longer approached each task timidly. She carried hay with ease, guided horses with confidence, and even managed the small herd alone when he needed to tend to distant parts of the property. Her confidence inspired him. He respected her not just for her ability to learn quickly, but for her dedication, her quiet determination, and the compassion she showed to every living creature on the ranch. He often thought back to the day she first arrived, remembering the doubt he had seen in her eyes. Now, that doubt had been replaced by resolve and capability. As the bond between them deepened, they began to rely on each other in subtle, meaningful ways. Clara noticed when Thomas seemed tired or burdened and offered to take over certain chores. Thomas, in turn, would quietly ensure she was not overworked, providing gentle advice or lending a hand at the right moment. Their relationship was built on mutual respect and understanding, a partnership formed in shared labor and quiet observation rather than grand gestures or words. Over time, trust became the foundation of their connection, creating a sense of comfort neither had experienced in years. One afternoon, Clara was in the fields tending to the horses when a small foal struggled to stand. Its mother nudged it anxiously, and the foal's legs wobbled dangerously. Clara acted quickly, using her knowledge of animal care and instincts she didn't know she possessed. She guided the foal to balance, steadying it while its mother calmed down. Thomas arrived soon after, observing her actions with admiration. "You have a natural way with them," he said softly. Clara felt a surge of pride. Moments like this reminded her that she had grown stronger, more capable, and more connected to the world around her. Evenings were still their time to reflect. As the sun dipped behind the hills, Clara and Thomas would sit outside the small house, listening to the wind rustle through the fields. They spoke of simple things: plans for the garden, the best ways to mend a fence, the animal's health. But in these moments, something deeper emerged. They shared memories of the past, joys and regrets, and began to find comfort in each other's presence. Clara's laughter, once rare, now came more freely, and Thomas's quiet smiles became more frequent. Their companionship had grown from shared work to genuine affection, though neither had yet named it aloud. The seasons brought more than just daily tasks. They brought reflection. Clara found herself thinking often about the life she had left behind in the town, the whispers, the judgments, the cruel bet that had sent her here. They all seemed distant now, like echoes of another life. She realized she no longer measured herself by others' opinions. Instead, she measured herself by the effort she put in, the skills she developed, and the bond she was forming. She understood that life was about resilience, patience, and finding moments of joy even in the hardest circumstances. Winter approached, and with it came harsher conditions. The winds blew cold and fierce, and snow covered the ground in a thick blanket. Tasks became more demanding. Water froze, animals needed extra care, and the garden lay dormant beneath ice and snow. Clara adapted, learning to manage these challenges with calm determination. She and Thomas worked side by side, breaking ice for the animals, stacking firewood, and ensuring the ranch remained functional despite the weather. Through these trials, their trust in each other deepened. Each challenge they overcame together strengthened the bond between them. Despite the hard work, Clara began to notice a subtle change in herself beyond the physical. She felt a warmth growing in her heart, an openness she had not experienced since before her loss. She realized that her life no longer felt empty. The days were full of purpose, the nights full of peace, and in the quiet moments between chores, she found a sense of contentment that surprised her. Thomas had become more than a guide or companion. He had become a presence she relied on emotionally, a steady figure in her world who listened without judgment and offered support without expectation. Their connection was tested one evening when Clara fell ill after a long day of work. A sudden fever left her weak and dizzy. Thomas immediately took charge, tending to her with care and precision. He prepared warm broth, ensured she rested, and stayed by her side throughout the night. Clara felt both vulnerable and comforted, realizing how deeply she trusted him. In return, Thomas discovered a protective, caring side of himself that he had never acknowledged. The experience strengthened their bond further, revealing the depth of their reliance on each other beyond the practical tasks of ranch life. The small joys of the ranch continued to shape Clara's days. She delighted in the animals' personalities, the playful antics of a young calf, the gentle nuzzles of a horse, the careful watchfulness of the chickens. She found satisfaction in the garden's progress, celebrating the first shoots of spring and the harvest of vegetables and herbs. She and Thomas shared these moments quietly, sometimes speaking, sometimes simply enjoying the presence of one another. These small experiences became a foundation of happiness, showing Clara that fulfillment came from patience, care, and connection, rather than external validation. Clara also began to form a deeper sense of identity. She was no longer simply the widow or the woman who could not have children. She was someone who had proven her strength, resilience, and competence. Each chore, each decision, and each small victory contributed to her growing confidence. She understood that her life was hers to shape and that the past, while meaningful, did not define her future. She found pride in her accomplishments and gratitude for the opportunities she had been given, even if the path to them had been unexpected. As spring turned into summer, the ranch thrived. The animals were healthy, the fields were full, and Clara had become an integral part of the operation. She and Thomas had developed routines that allowed them to anticipate each other's needs and work efficiently together. Their partnership had grown into something deeper than mutual respect. It was a quiet understanding, a shared sense of purpose, and an unspoken emotional connection. The bond that had begun with survival and cooperation had evolved into companionship and trust. Yet, even amidst the calm, there were moments of uncertainty. Clara occasionally wondered if her past would catch up with her, if the town's judgment would ever reach this quiet place. She worried that she might be unable to face new challenges, or that life might bring unforeseen hardships. But each day she reminded herself of what she had already endured and achieved. She had survived loss, adapted to a new life, and learned skills she never thought possible. She had earned the respect of Thomas and created a home built on trust, patience, and care. These reflections strengthened her resolve and prepared her for whatever the future might hold. One day, while repairing a section of the fence, Clara realized how far she had come. She remembered her first day, unsure if she would even last a week on the ranch. Now she worked with confidence and efficiency, her hands skilled, her mind sharp, and her spirit resilient. She glanced at Thomas, who was repairing the barn roof nearby, and felt a quiet gratitude for his guidance and partnership. She understood that her strength had been built not only through her own effort, but also through the support and trust of someone who believed in her. As Part 3 comes to a close, Clara's life on the ranch was no longer defined by the past or by others' opinions. She had discovered her own strength, learned new skills, and formed a bond with Thomas that was built on trust, respect, and companionship. The challenges they faced together had strengthened both of them, preparing them for the unexpected turns that life might bring. Clara had become a confident, capable, and resilient woman, ready to embrace the next chapter of her story with hope, courage, and a heart open to possibility. Spring had fully arrived on the ranch, bringing warmth to the fields and a sense of renewal to everything it touched. Clara had grown confident in her work, and Thomas had come to rely on her not only for her skills, but for her steady presence. Together they had created routines, managed the animals, and tended the land with care. Life was still hard, as the ranch demanded constant attention, but there was a rhythm to it, a quiet satisfaction that came from seeing their efforts bear fruit. Yet, even amidst the calm, change was quietly approaching, a change that neither Clara nor Thomas could have predicted. One morning, Clara noticed something unusual. She had felt a little different in her body for the past few days, a slight fatigue, a morning queasiness, and a sense of anticipation she could not explain. At first, she tried to dismiss it, thinking the long hours and hard work were catching up to her, but the feeling persisted. Unsure, she decided to seek advice from a local physician in a nearby town. Traveling there alone was unusual for her. She had always relied on Thomas to drive her to places, but this felt important. She needed to understand what was happening. The visit was brief but life-changing. The physician examined her carefully, asking questions and conducting tests. Clara's heart pounded as she waited for the results, unsure what she would hear. Finally, the doctor looked at her with a gentle smile. "You are expecting," he said simply. Clara felt a rush of emotions, shock, disbelief, joy, and fear all at once. She had never imagined this possibility, not after being told she could not have children. For a moment she sat in silence, letting the news sink in, unsure how to feel or what to do next. When Clara returned to the ranch, she was quiet at first. She didn't know how to share the news with Thomas or how he might react. But Thomas noticed something was different. He had come to understand her expressions, her subtle gestures, and he approached her carefully. "What is it?" he asked softly. Clara took a deep breath, gathering courage, and shared the news. The words felt strange as they left her lips, but Thomas's response surprised her. Instead of doubt or fear, he reached out and took her hand, his steady presence a comfort she desperately needed. "We will handle this together," he said calmly. Clara felt relief wash over her. The fear that had gripped her heart for so long began to melt, replaced by hope and a sense of partnership she had not realized was possible. Life on the ranch changed subtly after that day. Clara still worked diligently, tending to the animals and fields, but she also began to care more for herself, knowing that another life was growing within her. Thomas, too, adjusted, offering gentle support and encouragement, making sure she rested when needed and never overexerted herself. Their routine became a balance between work and care, effort and tenderness. In these small adjustments, they discovered a deeper bond, a shared responsibility and joy that went beyond the daily chores of ranch life. As the weeks passed, Clara's body changed gradually. She experienced the small challenges of pregnancy, occasional fatigue, moments of nausea, and the constant awareness of the life growing inside her. Yet with each change, she felt more connected to the child, more aware of the miracle unfolding in a body she had once thought incapable of creation. Thomas supported her quietly, offering help without intrusion, providing reassurance without unnecessary words. Together they navigated the uncertainty and anticipation, learning to embrace the unexpected gift of new life. The news, however, was not something Clara could keep entirely private. One afternoon, a visitor from the nearby town arrived at the ranch unexpectedly. The person was curious about Clara, having heard rumors that she had changed since arriving. They inquired casually, asking about her health and work. Clara, cautious but honest, revealed that she was expecting a child. The visitor's eyes widened in surprise. Word spread quickly, and soon whispers reached the town. The people who had once mocked and doubted her were now faced with the truth. Clara, the woman they had underestimated, was about to become a mother. The news brought a mix of reactions. Some were astonished, others skeptical, and a few offered congratulations. Clara, however, was unfazed by the opinions of others. She had already discovered her own strength, her resilience, and the value of the life she was building on the ranch. She no longer measured herself by their judgments. Instead, she focused on the future, on preparing for the arrival of her child, and on continuing the life she and Thomas had created together. The whispers and gossip faded in importance, replaced by the tangible reality of growth, responsibility, and hope. Thomas proved to be a steadfast partner in every sense. He prepared a small nursery within the ranch house, ensuring that everything Clara would need was ready. He organized supplies, made adjustments to the daily routine, and even studied how to care for a newborn. His quiet dedication amazed Clara, who had known him as a man of few words and simple routines. But now she saw the depth of his care, the strength of his commitment, and the tenderness he was capable of showing. Their partnership had evolved into a true team, united not only by work, but by shared love, hope, and responsibility. The pregnancy brought moments of wonder and reflection. Clara would walk through the fields, feeling the sun warm her face and the breeze move through the tall grass, thinking about the child she carried. She imagined what life would be like, the joy and challenges ahead, and the kind of world she wanted to offer. Each small kick or movement from the child filled her with awe, a reminder that life could be surprising and beautiful, even after loss and heartache. Thomas often joined her during these walks, sharing silent moments of connection, their hands brushing or fingers entwining in quiet understanding. Yet the journey was not without challenges. There were moments of uncertainty, fears of complications, and the physical demands of pregnancy on the ranch. Clara sometimes struggled with exhaustion, frustration, or worry about what the future would hold. But through it all, Thomas remained steady. He encouraged her, offered reassurance, and shared in every concern, reminding her that they were in this together. Their relationship grew stronger, more resilient, and more trusting, founded on the reality of shared experiences rather than mere words or promises. The child's presence began to shape their daily life in subtle ways. Clara found herself more mindful of safety, more careful in her work, and more attentive to the rhythms of the ranch. She noticed how even the smallest actions could affect the future, teaching her patience and intentionality. Thomas, too, observed the changes with quiet pride, recognizing the way Clara embraced responsibility and growth. Together they adapted their routines, balancing labor, care, and preparation for the life that would soon arrive. As the months passed, anticipation grew. Clara often reflected on her journey, the loss that had brought her to grief, the cruel bet that had sent her to the ranch, and the unexpected path that had led to this moment. She marveled at the resilience of life and the unexpected ways in which new beginnings could appear. Her heart, once heavy with sorrow, now carried hope, love, and a deep sense of purpose. Thomas shared in these reflections, offering quiet reassurance and unwavering support, acknowledging the strength and courage Clara had shown. Toward the end of the pregnancy, Clara began to prepare for the most significant change of all. She organized the home, cared for the animals with extra attention, and made plans for the arrival of the child. Each task was performed with care and thoughtfulness, reflecting not only her practical skills, but also the emotional growth she had experienced on the ranch. Thomas remained by her side, participating in every step, learning and adapting alongside her. Together, they created an environment of stability, love, and readiness, ensuring that the child would be welcomed into a safe and nurturing home. As Part 4 comes to a close, Clara's life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined. The widow who had arrived at the ranch, lonely and doubted by her community, was now a woman carrying new life, filled with hope and purpose. Thomas, once a solitary rancher, had become a devoted partner, sharing in the responsibilities, challenges, and joys of preparing for a family. Together, they had built a life grounded in resilience, patience, and quiet love. A life ready to welcome the next chapter, filled with unexpected blessings and the promise of a future they would shape together. The ranch had grown quiet in the early hours of a cool morning. The sun had not yet climbed above the hills, and the air smelled faintly of hay, earth, and the crispness of spring. Clara woke before dawn, feeling both excitement and nervousness coursing through her. The day she had been preparing for was finally here. Her body ached with the final stages of pregnancy, but her heart was filled with anticipation. Thomas, who had been awake for hours tending the animals, paused to look at her, offering a small, reassuring smile. He could see the mixture of hope and fear in her eyes, and he took her hand gently, letting her know she would not face this alone. The labor began slowly at first with small, steady pains that signaled the start of something extraordinary. Clara breathed carefully, focusing on the rhythm of her body and the knowledge she had gained over the past months. Thomas remained by her side, calm and present. He had learned from observing Clara, understanding when to offer support, when to remain quiet, and how to provide comfort without adding pressure. Together they created a space of safety, trust, and patience, far removed from the town that had once judged and doubted her. Hours passed, and the labor grew more intense. Clara's strength and resilience were evident in every effort, every breath she took. Thomas encouraged her softly, reminding her of her courage and guiding her with gentle words. There were moments of doubt, brief flashes of fear, but each time Clara remembered all she had endured. Losing her husband, facing the cruel bet, adapting to life on the ranch, and preparing for this new beginning. She drew strength from her past and from the steady presence of Thomas, understanding that she was capable of this monumental challenge. Outside, the ranch came alive with the quiet sounds of morning. The animals stirred, sensing the change in the air, and the fields glimmered with dew. Clara felt a strange calm amidst the intensity of labor, connected not only to Thomas, but to the land itself. It was as if every moment, every step of her journey had led to this one perfect instant. She had endured hardship, grown in strength, and now was about to bring new life into a world she had once thought could never hold it. Finally, after hours of effort, a cry pierced the morning air. Clara held her newborn child in her arms, overwhelmed by emotion. The tiny life, warm and soft against her chest, was a miracle she had never believed possible. Tears streamed down her face, not of sorrow, but of joy, relief, and awe. Thomas watched with quiet wonder, his hands supporting hers as they marveled at the small being they had nurtured together. The ranch, the land, the animals, and all the struggles they had faced seemed to fade away, leaving only this perfect moment of life and hope. Clara looked down at the child, tracing tiny fingers and feeling the rhythm of a heartbeat that mirrored her own. The past, the loss, the whispers, the bet, felt distant and meaningless compared to the gift she now held. She realized that life, with all its unpredictability and challenges, could still bring unexpected joy. Thomas, too, felt a profound shift in his heart. The ranch that had been his world for years now felt fuller, richer, alive in a way he had never imagined. Together, they were no longer just two people sharing work and companionship. They were a family, united by love, resilience, and the shared journey that had brought them to this moment. The days following the birth were filled with quiet wonder and tender care. Clara learned to navigate the new rhythms of motherhood, adjusting her work on the ranch to accommodate the needs of the child. Thomas remained steadfast, assisting in every way, from feeding and soothing to ensuring that the home remained warm and safe. Together, they created a nurturing environment, a place where the child could grow surrounded by love, security, and the steady rhythm of the land. Each day brought small victories, from the child's first smile to the gentle coos that filled the house with life. As word of Clara's child spread, whispers from the town reached the ranch once again. This time, however, the reaction was different. The same people who had once mocked her and doubted her capabilities were left speechless. Clara did not seek attention or revenge. She did not wish to prove them wrong. Instead, she focused on the joy and responsibility of her new life. The contrast between the town's previous cruelty and her current happiness was clear, and the lesson was subtle but powerful. Life's true measure was not in gossip or bets, but in courage, perseverance, and love. The child grew quickly, and Clara and Thomas adapted to the joys and challenges of parenthood. They shared responsibilities, learning together how to care for this small new life. Nights were sometimes sleepless, filled with the cries of the baby and the adjustments of new routines, but each challenge only strengthened their bond. Clara marveled at Thomas's dedication, his patience, and his willingness to embrace fatherhood with quiet grace. He, in turn, admired Clara's strength, resilience, and nurturing instincts. Together, they were a team, partners in every sense of the word. As months passed, the ranch itself seemed transformed. The land, once just a place of work, now felt alive with the presence of family. The animals, the fields, and even the simple routines carried a new sense of purpose. Clara found herself more confident than ever, not only as a worker, but as a mother and partner. She reflected often on her journey, from widowhood to isolation, from ridicule to empowerment, and finally to this life filled with love and hope. Each step had shaped her, teaching her lessons in patience, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit. One day Clara returned to the town that had once doubted her. She did not go to confront nor to boast, but to quietly show the life she had built. With her child in her arms and Thomas by her side, she walked through the streets with calm confidence. People stared, whispers circulating as they recognized the woman they had once mocked. Clara smiled gently, acknowledging them without anger or pride. She understood that their opinions no longer mattered. What mattered was the family she had built, the life she had nurtured, and the joy she now carried daily. Thomas walked beside her, quiet and steady. He understood the significance of the visit, not for confrontation, but for closure. The town had attempted to define her worth with a cruel bet, but now she returned not with anger, but with proof of resilience, courage, and love. The whispers faded as people observed the simple truth. Clara had endured, adapted, and created a life that defied expectation. She did not need validation, but she found satisfaction in the quiet acknowledgement of what she had overcome. Returning to the ranch, Clara and Thomas settled into a new rhythm that included their child as part of every routine. Work continued, challenges arose, and seasons changed, but everything felt fuller and more meaningful. Each task, each moment of care was infused with a deeper purpose. Clara understood that life's trials had prepared her for this happiness, and she carried gratitude for every step, even the painful ones. Thomas shared in this understanding, recognizing that their journey together, marked by labor, trust, and unexpected blessings, had created something enduring and beautiful. The child's laughter soon filled the ranch, a sound that brought warmth to every corner of their lives. Clara watched the baby explore the fields, marvel at the animals, and respond to the beauty of the land. Thomas held the child gently, guiding and teaching with patience and care. Together they created a home where love, respect, and resilience were central. The cruel bet from the past, the whispers, and the doubt had all faded into memory, replaced by the reality of a family bound not by circumstance, but by choice, effort, and deep, enduring affection. As the sun set over the ranch, Clara and Thomas stood together, watching their child sleep peacefully in a small cradle near the window. The sky blazed with orange and pink hues, reflecting off the fields and hills. Clara felt a deep sense of peace, understanding that her life had come full circle, from loss and doubt to hope and joy. She had traveled a journey that taught her the value of resilience, patience, and love. Thomas squeezed her hand gently, and she smiled, knowing they had built a life stronger than any challenge or bet that had ever been placed against her. In this quiet golden light, the ranch was more than a place of work. It was a home, a sanctuary, and a testament to the power of perseverance and trust. Clara, Thomas, and their child had created a world of love and stability, where every day carried meaning, every moment offered growth, and every challenge was met with courage. The story of the widow who had once been underestimated had reached its most beautiful chapter, one of hope, family, and life renewed.